Mercedes have decided to up their game and bring even stronger upgrades for the remainder of 2024. However, it seems like the Silver Arrows are now a much bigger threat in both of the championships, considering the competitiveness of both their drivers. Nevertheless, with Hungary being a very similar track to the one in Silverstone, and with the bumpiness as well as the curbs potentially exposing the RB20's weakness yet again, could the Silver Arrows capitalize on a third consecutive win? And more importantly, what aspects of the car are they upgrading in the next couple of races? Mercedes and its car, the W15, started the season with a very worrying trend that it could fight in the midfield with Aston Martin. However, hopes that they could improve on their form came right away, as both of the drivers were satisfied with the foundation of the car. Now that Allison has revealed that the solution for more performance was literally hiding underneath their noses, it does look like Mercedes has everything they need for a competitive remainder of 2024. The question is, how much noise can they make before the first half of the season ends, or more precisely, in the next two races? This is something that we're very likely to see up close from Hamilton and Russell, and if there's one man on the grid who could make everything work out exactly like it's supposed to with the aerodynamics and the car's performance, that is James Allison. The current technical director of Mercedes is adamant that the upgrades they're bringing are going to be massive steps forward, ones that cannot be caught from the rest of the grid, and ones that could put them in contention for race wins much more frequently. While this does bring a smile to everybody's face, regardless of whether they're a Mercedes fan, due to the fact that the competitiveness will ramp up and the grid will be even more compacted now that the RB20 has reached its limit and McLaren, Ferrari and most recently Mercedes have emerged as potential race winners every weekend. Mercedes need to be careful because they might fall into the same trap as Aston Martin and Ferrari did. These two teams brought upgrades that they believed would propel them further up the grid, but all it did was the opposite, a negative downward spiral which they're now having a lot of trouble exiting. Be that as it may, the situation is loud and clear. Mercedes understands their issues and they tend to bring more upgrades to the car that would increase the downforce levels of the car, but would also prevent the bouncing phenomenon from happening like it did to Ferrari. This happened in Silverstone, so there's no reason to believe that it shouldn't repeat in Hungary, where the Brackley-based squad took 2 consecutive pole positions in 2022 and 2023. Elaborating on the upgrades to a greater extent, Toto Wolff went on to say, "There's more to come in terms of performance. We're bringing updates to Budapest and Spa. We must not get carried away. We had a win in Austria, benefiting from Verstappen and Norris, but in Silverstone it was an honest win. We had the real pace. You could see George and Lewis in the lead, almost under all conditions. We were there. When you consider that 5 races ago we weren't even a contender for the podium, which looked like the third year of non-performance, then it clicked. Suddenly, everything that didn't make sense made sense, and the results of the development directions are back like in the old days. We're finding performance, we're putting it on the car, and it translates into lap time." What can be understood from these words is that Mercedes does seem to have fixed one vital issue in their car, and that is the correlation issue between the simulator and the on-track data. This is something that the team has struggled with massively in the past couple of days, and it looks like there are no signs of it in the upcoming period, because the upgrades are working perfectly and all of a sudden we have both of the Mercedes drivers potentially finishing in the top 5 after the first half of the season, as we have 2 more races to close the curtains on this chapter. While many dubbed the front wing to be the game-changing part of the W15, Wolff denied any magic revolving around this part and said that everything that the team managed to gain was through pure work and dedication back in the factory. And every part is deemed legal by the FIA, meaning that the protests from the other teams are making absolutely no sense. Furthermore, Mercedes' mission to dethrone Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship is currently aided by the poor performance of Sergio Perez, who has been more or less helping the rest of the grid much more than his own squad. Be that as it may, Hamilton has added that the team now knows what the car needs and what it requires from the factory, and when talking about this matter to a greater extent, the 7-time world champion, who became the record winner in Silverstone and will have the chance to do the same in Hungary this week, went on to say, "I think we're super close, and I think hopefully with the next upgrade in Hungary, we will be in an even stronger position to really be fighting at the front row more consistently." At this point, it does look like the mid-season development war is between Mercedes and McLaren because from this point of view, they had the car with the best behavior on all types of corners and tarmac, while on the other hand, the limitations of the RB20 and the SF24 have been quite visible. It's the Max Verstappen factor that is extending the lead in the Drivers' Championship as of now. But the Austrian squad cannot always hope on this, and while they're making a big use of the fact that Mercedes joined the top 3 and have made things a bit more complicated for McLaren to keep their step up to Verstappen, it's evident that they cannot always prey on this, and Verstappen will start to lag if the car doesn't bring the needed performance to the asphalt. Even more good news for Mercedes is the optimism that has been shared by Toto Wolff. The Austrian didn't really believe until the previous race that they had a car that could fight for race wins, as he thought that the podium was the maximum they could achieve. Not only did they lock out the front row, but they also had a genuine pace to keep it that way until the end of the race, had it not been for the mixed conditions. Of course, now with the heat wave in Europe and the hotter temperatures in Hungary, it would be interesting to see whether or not Mercedes will be aided by the fact that the tarmac will be hotter, which used to help them a lot in the previous races, especially before they found out the cure for the W15's performance. Elaborating on the hopes for the team in the following period, Wolff said, "It does feel like we're one of the fastest cars on the track right now. In Austria, we weren't far off when you look at the gap that we had before the Verstappen-Norris crash. It was maybe around 0.2 per lap or a bit more, and that is the closest we have been for a long time on a track we didn't like so much in the pace. That gave us hints that it could be getting much better. Honestly, we didn't think it would be Silverstone that would win on pure merit because of just the small things that we put on the car. We were more expecting Budapest or Spa, but I agree with Russell. We justified what we do as being right at the moment." This is even scarier for Mercedes rivals because, similar to McLaren, they managed to find a lot more performance than expected from what seemed to be a significantly smaller upgrade package compared to the Woking-based squad, as their customer team brought a huge package to Miami and became race-winning contenders ever since. Nevertheless, Mercedes is now in the mix and it looks like we're going to see yet another close fight between the top 5 drivers, with Perez being left out due to the fact that he just cannot get enough performance out of the RB20, and with additional pressures on his shoulders, we might be looking at a mid-season swap for the Austrian team. Obviously, Mercedes will be hoping that Verstappen will take the engine penalty in Spa, a race in which they could be capitalizing on huge gains now that optimism persists in every member of the team, and furthermore, with this development path, Mercedes could be very close to pursuing the signature of Verstappen, now that the 3-time world champion can clearly see that the Brackley-based squad means business when it comes to 2025, despite the departure of Hamilton. With all this in mind, do you think that Mercedes has what it takes in order to score pole position and a race win in at least one of the next 2 races? And furthermore, do you think that they're back in business with the latest upgrade package? Let us know in the comments below.